tickets she had often begged me for, and they took us to the streets of Baltimore. Well, her heart was filled with gladness when she saw those city lights. She said the prettiest place on earth was Baltimore at night. Well, a man feels proud to give his woman what she's longing for, and I kinda like the streets of Baltimore. Got myself a factory job. I ran an old machine, and I bought a little cottage in a neighborhood serene. Then every night when I'd come home with every muscle sore, she'd drag me through the streets of Baltimore. Did my best to bring her back to what she used to be. Then I soon learned she loved those bright lights more than she loved me. Now I'm going back on that same train that brought me here before, while my baby walks the streets of Baltimore.
I can start this. Wait, I gotta get my clicker. All right. I got still more people coming in. Good morning, everybody. How's it all going? Good? Nice. Again, we want to thank everybody for being here. This is a really great turnout. Again, welcome to Unite 2015. This is the School of Dragons, multi-platform distribution, the best practices of this stuff. If you're looking for the talk on quick and easy, everywhere MMO, this is probably not it. You probably have to wait for Unity, 5.3 now? Yeah. But for right now, we hope to have a bunch of really great tips and tricks for you guys to help your own games in terms of that. Let's see if the clicker works. It is not. Wait. Oh. Little effect there. I'm Chris Williams, the creative director of Jumpstart Games, and this beautiful gentleman next to me is Robert Bailey. He is our VP of our application programming. Now, Rob and I have worked together for 20 years at Jumpstart. And a little bit of background here. It was started at Knowledge Adventure, where it was mostly kind of kids entertainment. We merged with Davidson and we bought Blizzard, which turned out to be a really good buy. We were then acquired by Sendin and then became kind of Vivendi Universal. Rob and I have worked on everything from Barbie to Jurassic Park. You can see a bunch of the games we worked on. What I want to point out here is we kind of branched off away from Vivendi toward that other side. If you can read all those, I'm not going to go through them all unless anybody really wants me to. Nobody cares, right? So we branched off to become more of kind of MMO online for kids. So we made all these, a bunch of successful worlds. Like we had Jumpstart World, Math Blaster, a Super Secret, and Eat My Desk, which is kind of more of a racing world. But because of that is why it brings us to actually what we're talking about is School of Dragons. So because we were so successful in the kind of the kids space in these giant worlds, DreamWorks approached us, and because they were having a new movie coming out for one of their biggest franchises, How to Train Your Dragon. And it's, again, next to Shrek, it's really their largest one. They've got, of course, Netflix. They've got the third movie coming out in 2018. A lot of stuff going in the works, so they approached us for this. and actually instead of just talking about it, which nobody wants to hear me talk if I don't cough a lot, is this is kind of a quick little movie that we debuted at the Comic-Con 2013, you guys down in San Diego. And this is just...
In a world where dragons are real and knowledge is power, the bones have spoken, and once again, Burke needs heroes. Heroes who can use their brain as well as their brawn. DreamWorks Animation and Jumpstart Studios now bring you the ultimate in dragon training. Welcome to the School of Dragons. Here inside the hatchery, you'll develop a bond with your own dragon, which will grow and learn with you, with a little help from your friends. As you embark on epic adventures of scientific discovery and uncover the wonders of the world, you and your dragon will be top of the class. Be prepared to show off your marksmanship in the Fireball Frenzy skill course. Leave your classmates in the dust as you and your dragon set the sky on fire in the school's own tricked-out dragon races. All this and so much more is waiting for you at the School of Dragons. Now, play with your friends on Facebook. Get ready for the ride of your life.
Hold on!
Take School of Dragons on the go with you. It's available now on your iPad and Android devices. School is now in session.
So we got that. And so what's really interesting, so I kind of talked about how we released in 2013 before the movie, and you can see that we were on the first, we were first in browser-based only online, in the 4 major browsers. And very quickly we got to Facebook, and I'll show you the numbers of how it actually really helped the business out. And in the December of the Christmas of that year, we were able to get onto the App Store. A little bit later, we were able to, because of all the plethora of devices, to get onto the Amazon and Google Play. 2014, further down, we got onto Windows. And then we actually expanded even further and globally to be on Steam. And that we, of course, had different issues with that, which we'll talk about. 2015, we went more international with Congregate and VK. VK is the kind of the Facebook of Europe. Russia, that kind of stuff. And then we needed to go to standalone in July 2015 because I think everybody knows, boo, Chrome, they stopped supporting Unity. So we had to kind of do kind of a more standalone versions. This should extend out for 2016, where we'll go to more of the console. So the stuff that Rob will show you, that because of the system that we've kind of put together, we're able to extend the platforms pretty easy, whatever the Unity supports. If we look at some of the numbers for this, we're looking at, again, what I like this slide is because it really shows that one platform can't really rule them all. If you look at our like North America and even down in Australia, we've got our online does a little bit better in terms of that, but if you look at Asia and like South America, Facebook does better, and you can see that those are pretty big for like Android also. If we go further with some numbers, if you want to see it again, this will show you how it's broken down on how often we're used during the daily sessions, how long the daily session is, and then kind of where our sales is based on this. So if you look at this, online, we have a decent amount of daily users, but you can see most of the revenue comes from that. While Facebook, which we do really well because we've got lots of downloads, they actually play for more times of the day, while iOS plays more often, actually for longer times, but we get a lot less more revenue from Facebook itself. That's our sales. Our ad revenue does really well for Facebook, so it's great to have. We have lots of downloads and DAUs for that. I think that's really what I want to show on that. This is more of a Rob issue.
Thank you. Good morning. So for us, I think the best way to show what we think is the best practice is kind of show you how we do things here. I'm going to first talk about the initial considerations we made when first making the product. And Chris will talk about what his team does on the art side. I'll come back and talk about, once they're done with the art, what we do to make it fit into our game. I'll talk about build automation in some good detail. Things we do at runtime based on the different devices will change how the game is played. And then we have, of course, maintenance and update because it's a constantly living game. We're doing releases, sometimes twice a week, and how we do that. So as Chris said, we first started back in 2008 with our jumpstart title, which was, I think, might have been back in like Unity 2.1. So of course, when we first started out, the only thing available was the on GUI calls, and so that's how all our UI was done. We kind of wrapped that in so that we could use it. Today, we had to switch over, of course, to use NGUI, on GUI. Trying to use that on a mobile device just is not an option. It's too slow. Your frame rate will just not be there. For MMO server, we started with SmartFox 1.0 back in 2008. There really weren't a whole lot of options. I think maybe Electro server was another option, and I think Unity had some kind of basic MMO capability. But SmartFox gave us the best out-of-the-box thing that we could use. So today, all we did was upgrade to SmartFox 2. That we've been doing this for, School of Dragons is now about 2 years old. If we wanted to switch over to something like a Photon or Unity's built in, that would be quite an undertaking for us. Back in 2008, there wasn't really anything called a plugin. So, and of course, today, we have Prime 31, which I'm sure everybody uses. Unibill for IAP, Facebook, Steamworks, Tapjoy, TrialPay. I'm sure there's about a dozen different plugins we use, maybe more. Version control, the only option we had was the asset server, which worked great back in 2008. For 2012 and beyond, we switched over to Perforce. We have a development house over in India, and Perforce works out great for us because therefore we can have a server on each side. It'll automatically sync the data between them, and then the team in India doesn't have to wait on the asset server because that's how they were doing it before. They would pull data directly from the US, and sometimes it would take them several hours to update at the end of the day. Data, we store all our data in the SQL Server in the back end. We have extensive API to pull data. Today, we actually use XML files more often. We find that because of the load on the SQL Server, anytime we can take any of the data out of the SQL Server and put it on our CDN in an XML file, that definitely reduces the load on the server, so we move more static data into XML files. We actually take other files like bin files, which is a binary format we use for some of our content. We'll build those into an asset bundle so that we can download it and cache it on the user's hard drive so they don't have to download that every time. Of course, asset bundles. I'm sure everybody uses asset bundles. When you have a small game, not small game, a big game like ours, you want to have a small download. Or I think our initial download from the App Store is about 70 or 80 megs. Once you download all the asset bundles, I think the game's like over 2 gigs worth of data. Art?
Oh, nice. I think this side says it all. Maybe not, but let's take a look here. So it was great working with DreamWorks because we had really great access to all their assets. And you can see some of the assets. And what's funny is that a lot of people said, oh, well, all the art's already done. You've got all the 3D art. It's all there. Your job is super easy. Of course, when we actually get the assets, it's like one of them, the polygons, or you're looking at 250,000 polygons, not including all the NURBs for the hair and everything else. So, of course, there was a lot of work we had to do. We have to reduce them so it'll actually work on an iPad too, right? So what we did, we looked at a couple different ways of actually knocking stuff down. I think Unity had some kind of thing that didn't really work. There's a couple other programs out there that will try and knock stuff down. But we ended up doing, again, everything by hand because you really can't get better than actually placing the polygons where you need the skeleton and everything to bend and go to, right? So this is about, I think this is about 250, 2,500 polygons. Knocked it a lot down. We, of course, then added the textures. And again, we got a bunch of great textures from them, too, but going through them, they're giant 4K textures. Like one of them, I just kept staring at them, like, what is this big 4K texture? I found it was Gobber's toenail. It was just a giant texture. I knew that would have blown my whole budget if I just used his toenail. And it was funny, they even had like a dirty version of it. I'm like, wow, they've got every kind of texture you'd ever want. We ended up, of course, creating our own based on the turnarounds for that. Another excellent blank slide. Yes. The reason why I have this in there is because, at least my opinion is, art is always the first target when something goes wrong initially. You've got low frame rate, or you've got, we've got too much, the memory is crashing, or we got too much cache used up, that kind of stuff. the programmers always look at us like, oh my gosh.
Not the programmer.
It's, it's our fault, right? So we put together a bunch of different budgets and pipelines to kind of help that stuff out, and that really has helped a lot. So again, I'll go through all these. Again, the difference in terms of building for the best quality, making texture atlases, as well as this. The third one is really important in terms of making master texture material folders for each scene. A little more work, but again, it really helps out in the long run. Optimization labels for the artist to use. And then this next row is kind of, again, thanks to Unity, is really kind of a godsend to help us out, again, for optimization, of course, lighting, occlusion, culling, terrain, and LODs. Again, remember, when we were first doing these worlds online for Jumpstart and stuff, we didn't have half of this stuff. I think we had terrain, but everything else wasn't there. So we had, it was really a welcome features. Besides that, we have we customize shaders, and we actually optimize even further for low-end devices. And I'll show you different examples of how we, again, we want to make sure it's the same experience on whether you're on iPad 2 or on Steam. And then again, when all else fails, and that's always a bummer for artists because you always have to make your art look a little worse than you want it to. The first one, build for the best quality. Because we've been doing it for 20 years, sometimes we were trying to say, oh, let's just make it run well, and we'll always add the detail for these other platforms. That really doesn't work, you guys. At least that was what we found out. It is getting easier to put in all the detail that you need, at least which your budget accounts for like something like Steam. And again, it's also easier because since we're working with DreamWorks, we have to get approval. Does this look like Toothless? Well, great. Make sure it's the right color. Make sure the structure's correctly. So, of course, a little higher polygon asset does help for approvals. If it gets knocked down later, they go like, oh, it's got to run, so it's not a problem. And again, for all the marking assets, it does help for having nicer assets and larger textures. So that's why we always start with larger textures and then knock them down. And the only little side note that I put on here was that when we do commercials and stuff for like Disney XD TV and all that stuff, we will go ahead and increase the polygons in Maya and stuff, just to make it look a little, just so the silhouettes look a little better. The textures look pretty good already, so we just do a little bit of that. A lot of people do this already, but again, combining textures, it really helped our draw calls. We'll take, again, a few textures and put them into one based on the scene. So if there's a bunch of like torches and shields and barrels and stuff, we'll put them on one. And the main thing to make sure you guys do is do not put an alpha inside this. Even if it's a tiny little piece of alpha, the whole thing becomes another alpha channel, which hits the shaders pretty hard. So we put all the alphas on one. The other thing I showed here is different special placement for the repeating textures. So instead of having to top up a bunch of polygons, we can then, of course, repeat them as long as they're in the right UV space. So we can repeat, obviously across in terms of this case. This one's interesting. And again, the master texture material folders, you guys, when the artist first heard about it, it's like, oh, it's going to be a pain in the butt, because usually we export everything as FBX, as most people do, right? And we already have all the textures and everything built in. It's all exporting with the media. Well, now what we do is we export without the media, and now we actually have a texture folder and a material folder when we come in. So when I bring a tree in, right, it's blank, so we have to, of course, put the texture for the tree in it and a material ball for the tree. Once we bring in all the other trees, though, it guarantees that all the other trees will have to share that. If not, you'll see magenta or some other crazy material color. So by doing that, we can guarantee we optimize the texture memory for the best we can. It's a huge help. And again, what we like about it too now, because we do a lot of holiday and theme changes, especially for Jumpstart as well as Dragons. Dragons has like Harvest Hans, which is their kind of Halloween. They've got Snaggletog, which is their Christmas. And again, it's obviously snow on the ground, so it's very easy. It literally takes us an hour just to quickly switch out all the materials and remake the scene, and we're done. So this kind of system does help a lot. And what Rob is going to talk about, you guys, is how this folder systems is able for the import and automation system. So by doing that, we can have, of course, different size textures and stuff that he'll get more into in terms of that. Labels is the one I really like, because what happens is, of course, being the target, the first thing it goes, oh, okay, well, your textures are too large. And in some TD somewhere, I'm not looking even in particular right now, they can just that's all they can do. They crunch them all down. It's really small. So all of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, the art looks like crap. So now we've got the ability, you guys, is to actually have these kind of labels so we can say what's important. Oh, a dragon texture is a little bit important than a torch texture, that kind of stuff. So we can actually go to each texture and then pull it up and to optimize for whatever platform we're looking at and what size we're looking at. And if we don't do anything, we already have in the automation system, we already have kind of what the defaults are. So if we don't touch this, if the artists are fine, whatever the automation system is going to do, that's great. But we can always go in and override it. So again, it really gives the power back to the artist. And again, if it's still running terrible, then we can, of course, go back and say, I think that's a nightmare texture. We can, of course, knock it down a little bit more if we have to. These are things I think everybody should be using if you're doing 3D stuff. Again, these are kind of came late to the game when we were doing it for the Unity features. Again, it's been night and day. You can see that that's without it, and this is now with light mapping. And again, with light mapping, as you guys know, within light probes, you almost don't even need lights anymore, real-time lights. And I also put up a couple things, because when we first used it, when Unity came out, was it 3 point something, I think, when they came out with the light mapping? It's like, this is great, we started doing it, and all of a sudden it started generating all these light maps, and we didn't know what we're doing. It's like, wow, there's all these maps. So this gives you a little bit of idea where to start with, to anyone new to this. We usually start with our light map resolution at 400, and the object scaling is what was doing it. It's like all of a sudden it was giving a huge amount of texture space for like a little torch or something. Now we can knock those to like 0.0001 if we have to. And this has been, again, a huge help for that. You can see, again, just kind of the differences of how much more life you can give to a scene, especially on mobile, for free. It's just really amazing stuff. And again, even you can see how the character looks even better lit in terms of with the light probes. Another few things, again, is the occlusion calling. Again, everyone should be using this. And when we were using when I designed the jumpstart world first, you guys, we did not have occlusion calling. So I designed everything with just frustum calling. So everything was, the player was in the center, and all the points of interest were kind of around in a big circle, kind of like a huge compass. So I could then build things in different pieces. So if I was looking over here, it wasn't drawing behind us as one giant piece. So we did that, but now once we have occlusion calling, we can have things in the middle, we can have light traps, and now our designers design with occlusion calling in mind. Again, obvious to a lot of people, but again, we should definitely be using it. We use terrain a lot more than I thought we were going to, because as we know, the Unity terrain engine isn't necessarily the best, but it does really work well, especially for Vikings, because they are in the forest. We need lots of trees. And first we're like, oh, let's just go ahead and make a bunch of small ones, because that'll be great. Here's like for each different like cliff and stuff, let's make just a little terrain piece. Well, we found out that each terrain piece, no matter how big or small it is, it takes 10.5 megabytes. So again, what we do now is use one giant one, and we can then pull it up and push it down, and it's always 10. So that's really important for the mobile devices, especially for the iPad 2. And again, another little tip that we found out the hard way a million different times is a good pre-plan for your lowest point, you guys. We've had too many times where like, okay, we pull up the ground level to, so high, and then we have a sea, but then all of a sudden the dragons are too big, and all of a sudden they can't get below the ocean, and we want to go lower, and of course we can't. So we have to raise up the whole level, reposition all our markers and everything again. So really look at like what your lowest point is going to be, because you cannot go below 0, 0 in Unity. LODs, again, another great feature Unity added that we use like mad. Again, a couple quick tips on this is try to have the same number of LODs. We first had, the buildings had like 3 different LODs. The bridges only had 2, and then they popped at different rates and stuff. It looked a little odd to us. And again, we really set up budgets early for with the programmers in terms of, okay, if we look at this one, this has got about 5,000. This has got about 500. And what I love too is that we almost just use the low poly LODs for the low-end machines. We actually just strip out the high polygon stuff, you guys. And you can see that, again, the low polygon, she doesn't, wash her hair anymore. She's red, she's embarrassed. You have a low-end machine, so hopefully that gets you guys to get a better device, hopefully. Another couple of things that we do is the custom shaders. We always, again, take the cheapest shader, mostly a mobile shader, and we just add just the channels we need. This example, again, I don't expect you guys to read this, and again, I'll give you guys the slides. This is showing for our customization of the dragons. So we took the mobile shader and we just added the 3 channels so people can customize their dragon 3 different colors. And you can see the RGB channel there. And then they can, of course, use the slider. So that's what that is. Again, using the cheapest one. And then for like the Steam, I think we then, of course, put in like the bump map channel, the normal stuff. So we did all that. The other thing that we also do a lot of is low-end device optimization. Again, I talked about using the LOD system. And again, for like an iPad 2, we literally strip out all the higher LODs. It saves on both the video and the cache memory. The other thing to notice, we actually create separate scenes for each of the worlds. Like for the school level, we'll actually really create, instead of just we rely on LODs, we'll actually literally change some of the other geometry and stuff and take out some unnecessary pieces, just so, again, the game looks and feels like the same one. And it runs well. That's the biggest thing, is to make sure your game runs well. And again, obviously, the nightmare for most artists is when all else fails, this is when we have to really just strip out all the extra decor stuff, remove all the particles, reduce the textures even more, take out every light we can, and we even go back into all the texture atlases and then further optimize and push and pull them together. I put together a quick little kind of a movie, a split screen that kind of shows the mobile and the web. Let's see if this actually works. And what you'll see, okay, in the mobile on one side and the web, and you'll see, and again, I do stop it here for a second so you can actually see the difference. You can see the particles from the water and stuff goes away, the reflections from the water will go away, and a lot of the little details like the torches and the barrels and all the shields and stuff will go away. But again, the thing still really feels like the same experience, and that's what our biggest goal is to do, is again, and things that are non-essential, like this building down here will actually go away for, and some of the extra statues will go away for the mobile side. Again, I'm really hoping it still feels like it's still the same experience. And I think it does it one more time, because we can't get enough of this. There we go. And yeah, you get the idea. I can't go forward until it's done. And I think that is mostly of the art stuff, you guys. Can I go to the next one? Oh, there we go, Rob.
All right, thank you. So, of course, Chris and his team, they make some great art. What's that?
Nothing, sorry. I didn't turn it off.
So, of course, now we want to put it on a low-end device like an iPad 2 or an Android 512K, and the art won't fit, right? So what are some of the things we do to get the art to fit on these low-end devices? I'll show you how we bundle for different qualities. We have 4 different bundle sets we can do. We can do a low, a mid, a high, and an ultra. While we do that, we'll swap out some shaders. Any kind of advanced shader, we'll swap that out for a more or less complex shader. We'll resize the textures. We'll do the different compressions on them. We'll strip out LODs. We don't even want the LODs to be on the device. It takes up too much memory. We also can do some animation frame and reduction and compressed animations, and some things we do with the audio. Yeah, so I'm going to show you this. Can you hit the button, Chris? Perfect. All right, so we can see here in our demo project, I've put just a few sample things. We have like an easy water shader. Come on, respond. Uses a bunch of different textures. We've got a building here that's got a bunch of LODs. We've got a bunch of sound files in here that are like stereo sounds, a bunch of different textures. For the school buildings, you can see some of what Chris talked about earlier, some of the labels on them, optimize minus, optimize plus. These things are all 1024 textures right now. So then we've created a tool for us, so we can go in here, we can say, you know what, we're going to build this for a low memory or a low bundle device. We can bring up our tool. And so we can go in here, and for all the different things, we can have different settings for textures, audio, prefabs, materials. Let's go through each one of these real quickly. So for textures, for example, we can say, okay, what type of build is it? You know, what platform is it? iOS, Android, standalone. Right now, I just happen to be in standalone. And for all the different labels, you know, what are we going to do? We're going to change the max size. We're going to compress it. We're going to make sure it's power of 2. We'll turn off, you know, read, write, alpha, all the different formats. For audio, we'll compress it in memory instead of it trying to what's the setting here? Decompress on load. We'll say, compress it in memory. We'll change the compression rate. We'll change it from stereo to mono. One of the interesting things we do is whenever we want to use a sound in the game, we actually, instead of using the actual sound in the reference, we'll use what we call a stub file. The game recognizes that's a stub file, and then it will go to the CDN to download the asset bundle for that sound file. So that way we can have different types of audio for different devices. Prefabs, we can go in here. We can say, we only want to use one LOD. Which LOD do we want to use? We'll strip out all the other ones. Models, we can tell it, how are we going to compress the animations? Are we going to use tangents? We want to turn off read-write, as long as we don't want the meshes to be read-writable. Materials, we got a giant list of here. You can see this thing's over 50 different shader replacements we'll do. For mobile devices, we'll definitely take out any of the more complex shaders and replace it with a very simple shader. So I can go down here to the bottom, just do that. This will take probably about 30 seconds to run, I think. One thing to notice, this used to be a manual process. Somebody would have to go in here and start this process every time we wanted to do a build. This is a very, very small project. It's only got a few hundred textures, a few prefabs. It's going to take about 30 seconds. You can imagine with a giant build or a giant game like Dragons, where we have thousands of textures, this process, I think, used to take 4 to 8 hours or something like that. Yes, we created this tool. We'll have to look at that. Where are we at? About halfway done. Just wait for it here. And one of the things we did through our build automation system is we've been able to take this tool that we wrote, and with the build automation, instead of it going through every single asset in the project, it'll know from the Perforce change set, it knows what assets have changed. It'll just re-import those assets individually and not have to go through the entire build process, through all the assets in the game. So now in the Easy Water material here, you can see the shader's been swapped out for a simpler shader. There's less textures being involved. If we go to our school building, you can see the LODs have been stripped out. There's only one LOD left. All our sounds have been switched to mono, so they take up less memory. All of our textures have been compressed way down. We have 128s, 256s. If you didn't specify the size, it goes down to 64 by 64. So in this way, we can say, okay, this is a low memory device. We're just going to take all these textures, we're going to compress them way down, and that way we can have the game fit on the device. And so how do we manage all these bundles? Well, we had to create another tool for us, right? We had a bundles editor. Obviously, we're still on Unity 4.6, so we can't take advantage of any of the new things that are coming out in 5.0 and 5.2. So anytime a bundle is created, we put in this list. The game uses this list to automatically build all the bundles. We can see that in build automation later on. We divide our bundles into kind of different sets: data, shared data, sound bundles. We can just say, anything in the sources folder in these different places, we're going to go through and individually bundle each one of those sounds into its own bundle. That way we can just download one sound at a time.
It also works for localization when we change different languages for
yes,
product.
Jumping ahead.
Sorry.
So obviously you can see here we have School Dragons is in 8 different languages. So some of our assets are specific to those languages, so we can specify these bundles here. Go to these specific languages. The game will recognize what language you're playing on, either on, if you're playing through the web player, we have a drop-down. iOS or Android, it uses the language that the device is in, and then it'll recognize that, and then it'll pull down this specific asset bundle for this language. We also put in here the different scenes we have. We have a huge number of scenes in our games. We also have mobile-specific scenes down here. We can see, I don't know if you guys can tell or not, over on the left, you can the PC and the web are grayed out. These scenes are only built for mobile devices. One of the things we do is if we have a scene that is UI intensive, like a avatar customization, or maybe a clans UI, we'll actually take the user out of the game, load them into their own scene, so that the UI can sit there and use up more memory, because one of the things you want to do for your atlases, for example, is probably not compress them because you don't want to compress your UI too much, because then the UI doesn't look very good. And so then the automation will use this list of bundles, and it will build all these things during the automation step. I'm going to switch back. So I went over that already. So build automation, obviously that's one of the big things in Unity 5.0. We are not able to take advantage of that. We're in still 4.6. So of course, automation is your friend. Automation is your best friend. If you guys do not use build automation, you really need to do that. With School of Dragons being across 10 different platforms, we also have, like I said, low bundles and mid bundles. We have 32 different branches that we build out of. If we did not do that through automation, we would just not be able to run our game. We use Jenkins for all our builds. We have 3 Jenkins masters. We have 1 in the cloud. We have 2 physical devices, 1 here in the US, 1 in India. We have 7, you can read through all these different things. One thing to note, we have 32 platform and quality specific virtual drives. So we can put like an iOS low on one drive, an iOS mid on another drive. The build machine can then determine what type of build you want, mount that drive, kick off that build. We have to have some physical build machines themselves. Obviously for iOS, you have to build on the Mac right now. And then of course, all of our storage is on the CD, is up in Amazon S3. Here's a sample of our Perforce projects and branches. You can see here we have a release branch for Amazon, a release for Android, submission branches, because once we go get ready for submission to iOS or Android, we kind of branch off from the main branch so that people can continue working on the main branch. And then we can only pull in the fixes we want into the submission branch. And then, of course, we have some feature branches for some of the bigger features. One of the nice things about using Perforce is that we can use the mapping system to control some platform-specific files. Like for the Facebook SDK, for example, it doesn't work on Windows or Windows Store app or WSA. So in the Perforce mapping table, we will just not download that folder onto that device, into that into that branch. One of the other things Chris mentioned before is that we have low bundled scenes, or the artist will create low scenes. So in that branch specifically, we can say, don't download the main scene. Instead, download this low polygon or low version scene, overwrite the main scene, and then the build doesn't know anything about the low scene because it's all handled through the Perforce mapping. And then the last thing we can do is we can say, all these asset bundles that we build on the build machine, let's not download those from Perforce. Let's just keep it clean on this actual project. As I mentioned earlier, before we had build automation, we used to do everything by hand. Our builds took about 12 hours. People would have to go in and manually flag which bundles needed to be built. Of course, human error always crops up. You want to try to eliminate any type of human interaction in your builds as much as possible because we make mistakes. So now our builds can be anywhere from 15 minutes to a couple hours, depending on how much needs to be rebuilt. What is this one? Of course, going to the cloud and the virtual machines eliminates the need to have a build tied to a specific machine at work. Before, we'd have a specific machine for making builds, and then let's say if it's a programmer's machine, if the build takes 12 hours, he can't really do any work while the build is being made. Not too useful. Of course, the only exception is the iOS builds. You need to have a build machine, a physical machine to do that. One of the things we ran into with the automation is, of course, when you build a asset bundle for iOS and Android, it's a lot stricter on scripting. If you change the script and don't rebuild the bundle, the asset bundle will fail to load. So in order to solve those issues, we actually, during our automation, if it's iOS or Android, we will load each bundle individually, make sure it loads. If it doesn't load, then we will rebuild that bundle. So it's kind of a catch-all to make sure that we don't have any bundles that don't load. Being able to use automation, we can do more things than just build the game in Unity. Once we export to Xcode, you can change the plist. You can set up all the different frameworks. WSA, you can do anything you need to do there for those build things. Of course, one of the drawbacks of WSA is in order you have to completely finish the build before you can move on to the next build. For iOS, like when you're building asset bundles, you can just build dev. We have 4 different environments: dev, QA, staging, and live. And so we can make all those builds at once. If you're doing a WSA, you kind of have to finish the build because the build will link back to some of the project libraries. And if you don't let the build finish, then you can get into some errors. And of course, we can also use automation to do other things like archive our releases and perform deploys. All of our builds get copied up to the CDN. And then if you say, you know what, I want to take that build, I want to deploy it to dev, you can go in, you push a button, it'll copy all those bundles to the CDN. It'll purge our CDN, and then the producer or QA can start using that bundles. Now, what we do at runtime is we like to change the experience for the device. So we mentioned before, we determine what type of device you have, and that'll determine what kind of bundles you get. We have a nice little configuration file where we can change all this stuff at runtime. So if we decide that, oh, that's not working, the high bundles are too much, we can switch you down to low bundles. Next time you launch the game, you'll get a different experience. We will also do things for low devices, as Chris mentioned. If there's any particles we don't need, we'll just destroy all those particles. We also control the number of MMO avatars you can see. We have a low polygon avatar and a full version avatar. A low-end device, you would only get the low polygon avatar. And we may also not even show you the number of avatars that are allowed in that room. You may only get a small subset of 10 avatars at a time. So any more than that will not show to you. And if you have a really bad device, like an iPhone 4, we actually turn off MMO completely, and you have no MMO avatars. Of course, we mentioned we disable particles and objects. The artists have a way to go into the game, and they can mark different particles as being important or not important, different objects as their importance. As you're running around the game, things that are not important will be just turned off, or particles not shown at all. We use, obviously, the quality level built into Unity. Based on your device, we'll set your initial quality level. So if you're on a low-end device, you may only go up to simple. If you're on a high-end device, we'll start you at fantastic. Shadows, we try to use real-time shadows. If your device is considered a lower-end device, we'll switch over to projector. Or in the worst case, we use a plugin called Fast Shadow, and then you just get a really crappy plane for a shadow. On the mobile devices, we try to pool our objects. So if you're going to instantiate an avatar, we'd notice that at runtime, you'll see a little bit of a hiccup anytime we create an avatar. So what we do is we know that, OK, if I'm on a low-end device, I'm only going to get 10 avatars. The first time you need to create one, we'll create 10 at once. And that way, the next time you need one, it'll just go to the pool and get one. Of course, we have about 40 different dragons in the game. So anytime a dragon comes into the game, we'll create him on the fly, and then once that dragon is used up and that player leaves, we'll put him in the pool, and hopefully the next time somebody comes in, they need that dragon, we'll just use him from the pool. We control the terrain at runtime as well. We can control the number of trees you see, the different visibility to the trees, and any other terrain settings. I think we have about 5 or 6 different settings that we use. Just going to go right into the video. So we have
Ice Storm Island.
Explore.
Explore an ancient city fraught with danger and shrouded in mystery. Uncover untold secrets. Discover a hidden paradise and never-before-seen dragons. Learn about unique and challenging new environments. Meet new friends and face old enemies. Adventure awaits!
All right. So that was a video from our first expansion pack. One of the things we can do with all of our branching and our updates is we can quickly put out new content. I think, how long did that take? About 6 weeks? A little longer. First one, so we had a few key learnings, but we were able to bring new content to the player. We obviously have a bunch of different branches that allow us any type of feature branch. We try to have a main branch, which is for most of the normal work. If we have a big feature coming up, we'll use that in its own branch, and so they can continue to work on that without touching the main branch. And then once they're done with the feature, we put it into an integration branch, which is just a combination of the main branch and the feature branch. for our QA department to test. Once we are ready to go in submission, we'll push everything into a submission branch so that we can keep the changes to a minimum and just bring in bug fixes and then get ready for submission to iOS and Android. And then, of course, once the build is submitted and approved, we'll push everything into a release branch. And then anytime we want to do some minor updates for, like I said, we do 2 releases a week sometimes with like new content, which would be just like new avatar parts or even a new dragon. We can put those directly into the release branch. As long as they don't need any new code, we can easily push those up live and constantly change the content. Pretty much went over that. We, of course, use Perforce heavily to do all this different branching. Obviously, with these tools, you can merge between the different branches. And of course, the branch map merging built into Perforce makes it very easy for us to move content between the different branches. As we said before, if you're dealing with a release branch where you want to push new content, you've got to be careful about not pushing any new code or even shader changes, because those could actually break the build and allow asset bundles to not load.
I'll take this. Again, just to reiterate what Rob was saying, because of the branching and because of the bundles, we're allowed to again, make more expansion packs without really hurting all the features. He told you about the first one. The second one we just did, and we did it literally in about a third the time, even though it has a bunch of new features in it where you can actually, like the dragons actually can chase you down and shoot at you and stuff like that. Again, just another quick video to show you. You'll actually see more functionality in this.
Call
but again, it
of
took us
the
less
Death
time because of the
Song.
automation system.
Experience explosive new adventures. Expand your horizons and explore the boundaries far beyond Burke. Solve the secrets of the mysterious Dragon Eye. Race to the edge and help rescue creatures in need. Join forces with an elusive dragon rider and face the most fearsome dragon yet. Adventure awaits.
Because of the timing, we were able to kind of keep on track and synergize with the Netflix TV show. Because we can do it so fast. So what we're looking at, kind of what we're looking at the very end here, this is kind of what I got out of everything that Rob talks about, is that when you get automation, branching, and bundles, you can really basically make a whole bunch of products based on all the supported Unity platforms. Again, in addition to all the varied platforms, it's much easier to integrate all the different APIs, whether it's Congregate or Facebook, that type of stuff. And then I think what other people talked about usually too, it increases viable builds, because we had a lot of builds that people would do, and because of human error, they just would fail. So we'd have to do it, okay, here's another 8 to 12 hours again. So that helps a lot too. And again, the next example here shows the reduction in production time for new IPs. So while Dragons was, again, a really big project, and it still continues to be a big project, we have 2 new ones that just came out. Instead of taking 18 months, it took literally 5 to 6 months for each of these, for Math Blaster on mobile and all the other platforms, as well as this brand new Jumpstart Magic and Mythies that just, again, I think came out last week.
Yep.
So we were able to do these very, very quick because of this automation system. It really relies mostly on art in terms of that. And I think we're now to kind of show some of the Dragons team. I want to definitely thank them for all their hard work. And I think we're open to questions, right? If anybody has any kind of questions for myself or for Rob. Don't be shy. You, sir, I know you have a question. He does not.
Yes. So I'm wondering, this is like a huge and elaborate process that you've constructed. Did you jump in all at once? Like, what was the initial commitment time-wise to transitioning from manual builds to these automated builds?
Yeah, we first got into automated builds about 18 months ago, and I think we still continue to change the process today as we learn more and more. We have our technical director is also here. He might have a better information about how long it took. I think it took about 6 months until we got it actually working. Does that sound about right? And like I said, today we continue to change things, right? Optimizing, like just recently getting to iOS and Xcode so that we didn't actually have to go into Xcode and change anything. Now we can do it all through build automation.
And we do have a full-time Jenkins person that actually kind of helps the automation stuff.
We have a full-time person who works just on build automation.
Hi there.
Okay.
I saw that you're still, that you mentioned Facebook. I was wondering if you're still on Unity Web Player in that, And
That's a great question.
you said that most of your more ad revenue you get from Facebook, so I was wondering how that works with, a Unity build.
Yeah. Yes, we are still on the Unity web player in Facebook. Obviously not on Chrome anymore. And I know they just recently announced a new SDK that only supports 5.0. I don't know if that's going to affect us here in the short term, if they're going to force everybody to switch over, because that'll be a big undertaking for us if we have to switch to 5.0. For ad revenue, we use a couple different plugins I think I mentioned. It's mostly through offers, where we incentivize the user to earn gems in the game by completing these offers or watching videos.
Are those Facebook offers?
It is not Facebook. It's using, I believe, either Supersonic, Trial Pay, or Tapjoy, or pretty much our primary ad plugins.
And the reason they're not Facebook all the time is because our general audience is more kind of kid-based, so we have to be COPPA and COPPA compliant and stuff like that. So we have to be very careful of our ads. And we just actually found out from Unity that we can actually be COPPA compliant with Unity ads now too. So we'll start looking at that too, which is really a big benefit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I think you mentioned that you unload or you don't load avatars on mobile platforms even if they haven't hit the max of the room yet. Do you get negative feedback from people who want to see their friends in a particular location but their friend doesn't load?
Not really, because the thing is you always see yourself the best you can, and then what happens is, even though there might be 10 people in the room and you only see a few of them, it's based on distance. So the closer I get, I will see my friends. And again, we have the ability to invite your friends to you and stuff, so you will see your friends, and we can kind of bias it based on your friend list. So we can do that. Thanks.
Identifying a quote low-end device on iOS is much easier, but on Android we had a nightmare trying to do that. What was your strategy?
Primarily, we just go off the memory on the device. If it's a 512 device, we do have the ability to specify specific devices, which of course is a losing battle.
Yeah.
So we use some other system infos, like does it support shadows? What's the shader level? What's the graphics memory size? And based on those different values, we'll kind of determine what kind of device you have.
Gotcha. Thanks.
We also have a real-time script that runs that will actually degrade the Unity settings based on your frame rate too. So we can, of course, pick the bundles based on your memory and stuff, and based on the device, and then we can still vary the frame rate and stuff based on the settings.
Yeah, that's one thing I did forget to mention. So we may choose like a simple quality level or a fantastic quality level when we first start, and then based on your frame rate while you're playing the game, we may degrade you down so that your experience gets better if we notice you can't support that quality level.
Hi there. I heard you say that your install is about 70 megabytes and then a full install is 2 gigs?
Yeah.
Correct.
What's the user experience like that? Are you downloading all your asset bundles at patch at the beginning, or are they downloaded as you need them?
So yeah, at the beginning of the game, when you first come in, we do have what we call a prefetch list, where we kind of specify what we think are the bundles that you need right at the beginning. And so yes, once the user installs, they can create their character, and then they say, I want to play. And then they get a loading bar that says, okay, we're going to download these whatever bundles we decide. And then as you're playing the game, more information will download as you're playing.
So you've segmented your asset bundles sort of by scene or by how far you think people are through the
Correct.
game?
So we think, okay, when we start the game, okay, what do we think is a 15-minute play time? These are all the asset bundles they're going to need. Okay, let's load those up front. And then all the other ones will load on demand.
Yeah, we have a very developed FUE for the first user experience, so we kind of know what they're going to need up front and kind of stack it that way.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, what is your workflow like for a developer to see actual bundles on the platform? Like, do you build it on the client, on the server? Do they have to wait? How it works with a branch?
Yeah, as the level designers, they can just build the bundles directly in Unity and test them right away in the editor. Only when we need the different qualities, like the different lows and highs and stuff, we have different branches on different machines. And that branch will already be configured for a low bundle, for example. So as you saw with the tools that showed you, that has already been run on that branch. And so it only updates anything checked into Perforce. And so it'll only build the bundles that it knows from Perforce. We try to use I think Unity's built in, what's it called? Blanking. How you tell which bundles are different or need to be rebuilt And so we'll only build the ones we need. If that answered your question.
Do your level designers test on target devices at all?
Most of our level designers do not test on the device.
No, because of our optimization stuff we have, it works on, again, from an iPad 2 all the way up. So we do not design the level layout for the device. Is that your question?
No, if you build a bundle for target device, there are subtle differences. If
Yes.
the level designer does not run it on the device, only like in Unity on his desktop, then like how do you guys manage to actually ensure that it all works?
Lots of QA.
Most of the time, yeah, the level designers, they're just setting up, different objects in the scene, different platforms and stuff like that. And those things pretty much don't change based on the device. It's more of the visual and graphics, like different particles won't play and things like that. But the core gameplay doesn't really change for the device.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi. What was your process for feature branch merging and general workflow for when scenes and prefabs needed to change in Perforce?
Good question.
Yes, that's the pain in the ass.
Yes, it is.
So for the people working on the feature branch, we pretty much leave it up to them to be constantly merging any changes in the main branch into the feature branch. And then, yeah, once we want to merge it back from the feature into the main, we have to go through the painful process of merging any kinds of scenes or prefab changes.
Yeah.
We haven't really got around that.
No easy way.
Okay. So no luck. Did you have lots of luck merging scene changes, or?
We haven't really tried.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, scene changes, yeah.
Thanks.
We know how painful it is.
Hi. So actually, I used to play jumpstart educational games
Nice.
15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm feeling old, thanks.
We probably made them.
Yeah, we made those.
I know, it it ages me a little. But I was just curious, that's a long time in the software industry and in the gaming industry, and I was wondering if you'd be able to comment on or characterize some changes in approach that Jumpstart has had to game-based learning in those intervening years.
Gosh, yes, that's a really, really great question. I definitely wasn't ready for anything like that. But the thing is, you're correct. I mean, everything that we learned, again, 20 years ago doesn't necessarily hold now, because everything was 8-bit, it was 256 colors, a lot of it was 2D or pre-rendered 3D. We did a lot of that, of course. So again, technology now, again, Moore's Law is just going faster and faster all the time. So we are constantly updating the technology all the time. But again, when you look at play patterns, especially for kids, they do change, because again, you're now seeing them on like Minecraft and stuff. So the way the UI and the GUI and stuff's laid out, that's always kind of the same. Again, I don't want it to be stereotypical, but sometimes little girls want to keep collecting and they want to do pets and stuff like that, while the boys want to get in there with a big axe and start fighting everything. Of course, we've seen some changes on that. So their play patterns are still kind of the same, but the way they access is totally different now. And again, that's why we had to go from, we're all doing all the retail stuff on floppies and CD-ROMs, right? Gold Masters and all that kind of stuff. And then everything was all online, so we moved online, and now, of course, it's now on mobile, so we're constantly moving all the time. Does that answer your question a little bit?
So, yeah, thank you. I enjoyed the game.
Sorry.
Yeah, so one other thing to bring up, too, is that, back in those days, you have a CD-ROM, and, the parent would put their kid in front of the computer, and the education was more kind of drill and kill, like, hey, here's all these math problems, here's all these reading problems. And in today's games, we try to integrate the learning more into the story of the games. And so our quests will be like, hey, why don't you learn how a plant grows? Or I don't know if you saw in the video, we kind of have this scientific lab where you kind of learn how to burn things, which everybody loves.
That's true.
And how things, different metals and different elements come together and stuff like
changes.
that. So we try to integrate the learning more into the story of the game.
We don't want the kids to know that they're learning, because they're like, ooh, learning, I have to do that at school already, right? So we want to make sure it's integrated as much as possible. So that's a really good point.
Great,
Rob.
thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question about asset bundles and how you use them. We're struggling trying to figure out what the right breakup is of our assets. Once you get past the first-time user experience, that sets kind of a logical bar on how you're going to divide up your assets, right, through those first experiences of play.
Yeah.
But once you get beyond that, what rules do you guys apply to figure out how to group your assets into asset bundles? Do you use a reductive approach where, like, when you talk about audio, you were talking about like one audio asset per asset bundle? Is that what you were saying?
That's correct.
So you use a reductive approach. You have a lot of asset bundles.
Yes, we have a lot of asset bundles, and then we try to do simple groupings for, like, if you have like a mission and you're going to need a lot of things in that mission, we'll put all those mission items into an asset bundle and load that
And some of the worlds have hubs, so like the main school can go to like the train area, but yet Burke can't go to the train area. So therefore we can kind of bundle stuff together based on scenes and how they're grouped in the logical flow to the worlds. We can do that too.
Have you run into any problems with having a very large number of asset bundles, or that break down on you?
Yes. Yeah, we definitely have to constantly monitor how much memory we're using for all the different size asset bundles, right? Because obviously the more asset bundles you load, the more memory it's going to take. And so we try to make sure you unload asset bundles at runtime that we're not using anymore.
So it's actually kind of similar question on asset bundles. We have a lot of asset bundles too, and just downloading a lot of them eats up a lot of memory. Have you guys done any optimizations in the actual downloading of them? Because the first time user experience is when you download them, and that's when your game uses up most of its memory, I think, just because of asset bundles.
I don't know if we do anything specific. One of the tricks that we did learn is that instead of going from like a Burke scene to a school scene, we actually go to a transition scene, what we call a transition scene, which is an empty scene that has nothing in it, and so that can give the Unity a chance to do an extra scene transition to clean up more memory in that sense.
More garbage collection, you mean? That type of
Yes.
stuff? Sure.
Back on the asset bundles as always. So with the number of asset bundles you're working with, have you guys seen it's better just to basically compress all those asset bundles into one zip and download 5 huge zips, or do you pull each asset bundle individually?
We pull each asset bundle individually.
Okay.
Because then we can just, I'm sorry, just because then we can just pull down just the ones that change, so we can have it's more granular that way. So.
We have a whole, asset versioning system where we can tell like what asset bundle has changed. We can update those. We have a config file that tells you which asset bundle has what version number, and that way, we use Unity's built-in caching to cache the bundles, and that way, like I said, if we want to change one bundle, we can change one bundle.
Yeah.
On the initial download, though, I mean, have you seen it more performant just to pull out each asset bundle at a time, or, I mean, obviously the first time they download, there's a lot of asset bundles coming across the pipe.
Those are grouped together a little bit more because of the FUE and stuff.
I see. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions, you guys? It's almost ready for lunch.
All right.
All right, well, thank you so much
All
for
right, thank
coming,
you,
you
guys.
guys. Thank you so much.
We won't run into problems, I think.
It's mostly.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like